Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, January the 31st day of the year. There are 334 days left in 2023. And welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Thom. So now we know, well, many of us have known for quite some time. If you remember, or if you've even seen the movies, Boys in the Hood or Straight Outta Compton, or just lived in a black community long enough, you already knew that black cops can be just as bad as white cops. It's a bad culture most of the time. And if you're going to cross the lines of society, you better know which ones to cross. Yeah, we should be outraged because that was horrible to watch that young man get beat and get his life taken. But we also should look deeper into why these black cops thought they could take this young man's life. One reason is these men did not fear for their own lives as they were in the process of taking Tyree's life. I guarantee you, Tyree had been a young white man, we wouldn't be having this conversation and his mother would not be grieving. These policemen, if and when they are found guilty, deserve nothing less than the death penalty. They crossed the line. And it's as simple as that. So let's move on with the show. Our G-listed guest today is Kelly Jasen. Kelly is the first woman president and CEO of the United Way Emerald Coast. She leads the United Way team, oversees all the day-to-day operation, and is a true civic servant. And we look forward to having our discussion with Kelly Jasen. This edition of Tuesdays with Thom, of course, is sponsored by our partners, the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Best Girl has been providing customized solutions to executive issues for 34 years. Let's hear from Best Girl.
Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher education institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants, led by Joyce Gilly-Gossam, Emily Hedrick, and Sean Jones, partners with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, and leadership, with always an impact on the bottom line. Best Girl's customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development.
Best Girl creates the solution that fits your need. So let's go on and get to our roundtable regulars and introduce Barbara Wallace-Edwards and Michael Walker. You know, the last week I was having computer issues, Michael had computer issues, and Barbara was sick. And so today, hopefully, all our computers are working fine. We're all healthy as far as we know, so we can all get in on this discussion. So good morning, Michael and Barbara. How you guys doing?
Good morning, guys. How are you all doing?
Doing well. Good morning, TG. Good morning, Barbara. I am doing fine, and I hope you all are doing well. Barbara, I hope you're feeling much better.
Thank you, sir. I am feeling better.
So Barbara's feeling better, and you had to get a new computer.
$1,600 worth of new computer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, hopefully it's worth it. It's worth it.
Yes.
So let's talk about Memphis for a minute. And I've raised this issue. They said, well, at least it wasn't a racial issue, but I disagree with that. Because if that had been a young white man, they would have never beat that man that way. Just because they know which lines to cross in society.
Yeah.
And people say, well, you shouldn't say that. Well, why not?
That's right.
It's part of the life I've lived.
Right.
And so I just don't think that we would have seen that, and that a young white boy's mother would not have been grieving like that, because they would not have taken his life. They would have known better.
I totally agree with you, Thom. And to watch Tyree's mother, I mean, you can just see the grief written all across her face, and to hear it in her voice it hurts me. It pains me they were interviewing her on TV. I watched the interview last night, and I mean, I was crying for her and for her family, because that had to hurt. This man was so close to home, and she talked about how he would drive out in the evenings and watch the sunset and take pictures, and he did that basically every Saturday afternoon or Friday afternoon or whatever. And she said, he was on his way home, wasn't bothering anyone, wasn't harming anyone, and to know that he lost his life for nothing is hurtful.
What did they stop him for? I've never heard that.
I don't think I've ever heard exactly what they stopped him for.
Well, it's been alleged reckless driving is what they said. And when I say they, I'm talking about, and I'm going to call them perpetrators.
Yes.
That's what they allege. But according to the police chief, she said they have not been able to find any evidence to substantiate those allegations.
Yeah, that's.
I can't even imagine, even if it was for reckless driving, no one deserved to be pulled out of their car and beat like that. I mean, give them a ticket if you're going to give them a ticket and let them go on. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, Thom, you mentioned the fact that there is a racial element in this, and I do agree with you on that. I agree with what you're saying, and it's kind of interesting. But right before I say that, I want to say this: that gentleman only weighed $130, if that much. Okay, and you have 5 police officers that are all 200 plus.
Mm-hmm.
So it took 5 of them to beat him like that. Where was the humanity in it?
There wasn't any.
Were they just insane? And I have to agree with you, Thom. They felt like they could do it to him and get away with it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes.
And
That's right.
people say that, people that are used to doing something, or they do it because they've done it before and gotten away with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this was a pattern here.
Yeah,
And go
you
ahead.
could tell. I was going to say you could tell they were very comfortable with it. It's like it was routine for them. That's what they do.
Right.
And yeah, it's
I don't want to. And you guys know me. I'm not one that cry race at everything that goes on.
mhm.
But the fact that these were black guys whooping this black kid, sort of, people took a breath, and said, "Well, at least it wasn't a racial thing this time."
Right.
It is a racial
It
thing
is. It is.
because they felt like they could do it and get away with it.
Right.
Well, let's explain the racial thing and why we sit here when all of us are African Americans. And from our perspective, it's the victim. That's where the racial thing comes in, not the fact that it was a black cop or a white cop, the victim. And I've read and I heard some psychologists say that it's the mindset of police officers that when the person that is stopped,
It's
if
black.
it is a person of color, then they approach them differently because it is a person of color.
Right. Regardless of the race of the
The
officers.
police officer. Yes.
Right.
Yes. So I agree with that. Here's something else that you guys may hear about is the fact that there was one police officer that was involved that was suspended prior to all of this stuff coming out and put on administrative leave.
Wow.
He was white. He was the officer that I think, if I'm not mistaken, that initially drug him out and tased him.
Okay.
And then moved on. And these other 5 officers began to beat him. He was the first person that was suspended, but he was put on administrative leave. The attorney for the family, Ben Crump, said, I thought this was supposed to be transparent.
Right.
Seems like he got special treatment. Why was
Right.
he suspended and put on administrative leave?
Was he a higher rank?
Don't know. They're being hush. I will say at least the fact that these cops have been immediately terminated and charged with second-degree murder. That is a step in the right direction.
Yes.
But it's kind of ironic, whereas this issue is the reason why people talked about reforming the police.
Right.
And I didn't say defund, I said reform.
Reform. Right.
Okay, it's 2 different things.
Right.
We have a situation here in Atlanta where the city of Atlanta, DeKalb County, Fulton County, they have, I can't remember how many acres, but they're trying to build a brand new police training center.
Mm-hmm.
And the hopes is to alleviate things like this, train them on how to de-escalate rather than escalate situations. But it's been in the news lately because there are some people that have taken up there to try to stop this from being completed. And these are people that have come from Portland all over, don't know who they're funded by. They were living in the trees out there to prevent the police academy from going forward.
Wow.
Fire department, they first had the fire people out there to check out the safety. They wouldn't go back. The reason being is these people that took up the land, they set booby traps out there where they would dig pits and put spikes in them and put human feces on it so that if somebody stepped into this trap, they would become septic and die. They also wired the trees so that when they got ready to clear the trees, bombs would go off with nails and all glass and all this shrapnel will come out. So here in Georgia, they're trying to build a facility in order to take care of that issue. And you have people from this organization that are trying to prevent it. A young man died last week. He was shot by state troopers. State troopers were going out there to inspect, and he shot at one, injured him.
Oh,
Wow.
The state troopers returned fire. He was killed. So now they started rioting in Atlanta because of this.
Wow.
It makes no sense.
Totally senseless.
Okay.
yeah. I don't know. I think, and I was going to talk about this at the end, but the most of my life, there's always been a fear of the police. Growing up in Birmingham, I was talking to my wife one day, and she grew up in Chicago, and you have uncles and aunts who aren't your uncles and aunts, but they're close family people, and you call them uncles and aunts. And she had an uncle, he was the police chief.
Mm-hmm.
He would come pick them up at school and take them home.
Wow.
And I told her, I said, when we saw the police, we ran.
Right.
And she said, well, why'd you run? I said, because it was the police.
Right.
And they weren't there.
One thing in this, you didn't say whether the police was black or white.
No.
You said police.
That's
Right.
right. That's
Right.
right. And they weren't there to assist and serve us.
Right.
As a
Right.
matter of fact, sometimes, I mean, we had a nice little community. We'd just be standing there talking, and if he got on us, it was a sheriff's deputy. If he got on us before we saw him, then we couldn't run because he was right there, And he would ask us what we were doing, and we weren't doing anything.
Right.
And then he'd tell us, well, you need to move on. I live right there. Where are we going?
Right.
We would move on, And so anyway, none of this is funny, but it's a sad situation.
Well, do you think the problem is this? The police are not paid a very high salary.
Right.
And do you think that it's the candidates that are doing the policing? Because in many respects, there are people that may not have been able to do other things that have become police officers. And now you've given somebody that's on a power trip, a badge and a gun, so they can exert authority over somebody else just because they have immunity as a police officer.
I think part of that can be true for some. I mean, I don't want to throw everybody in the same pot.
Right. Right.
I do know that Sean has just posted here that lawyers require years of schooling, but the police academy only takes about 22 weeks, 770 hours
Right.
for basic training. And I think one of the issues, particularly when you talk about lower income communities, generally the police don't live in the communities that they police.
True.
And so they're coming in as outsiders. We got to tame this jungle,
Right.
because these people aren't worthy, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. And
They
so,
don't value their lives. They don't value the people that live in those neighborhoods. They just don't value their lives as much. So,
and they
yeah.
don't think there's going to be any repercussions for what they're
Right.
doing. And we
Right.
shouldn't put everybody in the same bucket, but I think people are just really tired of this.
Yes.
And I mean, hell, Rodney King was what, 20 some years ago? And we had never seen anything like that on on video.
Right.
And now it just continues to happen. So,
And I read just a headline that flashed across my phone, I think late last night, early this morning, that 2 or 3 EMT workers were also relieved of their duties. I don't understand what was their involvement in this.
Well, their involvement was the fact of what you just said, ENT. They're supposed to be there to administer aid to somebody that's injured. They didn't do
They
that.
didn't. Okay.
so they were on the scene.
They were on the scene and they just stood there and let the police beat him, and they didn't administer first aid to this guy. It
Wow.
was never
Well,
administered. So
That's a
that's why.
culture. And that's a culture too, because they probably felt had they tried to intervene,
Yeah. They would have been
they would have gotten the beating.
absolutely.
And the thing about this group, this was a group that was called Scorpio, was the name of this unit. And I don't remember what the acronym, all of the words, but basically it was to diffuse or catch and make the neighborhood safer from people that were out there doing violent crimes.
Hmm.
That's what their purpose was. That's what their focus was. It had nothing to do with traffic stops.
Right.
One of our regulars, Antley puts in the chat that his dad is an ex-police officer, chief, and all the cops he grew up with were good cops. The cops these days I'm scared of, and I'm a grown black man, 47 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm when I lived in Birmingham, I was afraid of the cops. When I moved to Los Angeles, I was afraid of the cops. And in the small community where we live now, we have community policing, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the closing comment. But these police officers ride through the neighborhood. They speak to you. We have runs on the weekend where maybe 100 people are running through the streets, and the police are basically protecting them, making sure nobody comes along in a car and driving too fast.
Right.
So community policing can work. Now, this is a small community, 20,000 people. So does it work in a New York City? Does it work in a Memphis? Does it work in bigger cities? I don't know. But I think it's certainly worth giving it a try. So that's where we are.
Yes.
I'm just reading Antley. Antley says you were a lawyer. Ted Marcus had the police in his back pocket. Oh, man. Okay. And all of you all out there who don't understand who Ted Marcus is, well, that's one of my other names that Antley has bestowed upon me. So, okay. Anything else, Barbara Michael?
I have one other thing to make note of. The Inflation Reduction Act has a provision that will allow Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices. We've been talking about this quite some time, and it will not begin until 2026. However, a study was recently completed by Brigham and Young Women's Hospital and the Harvard Medical School, where they went back to the years 2018 to 2020 and applied the analysis that would be in this new provision to those years, they found that they would have been able to save 5% of the overall spending on drugs, which would equate to $26 billion only with a sampling of 40 drugs.
Wow. Wow.
Okay. So, you keep talking about, everybody talks about healthcare and the cost of healthcare. And when ACA and Obamacare came out, it was all focused on agents and brokers and saying they're making too much money. Those of us that are agents and brokers, we all along kept saying it's the underlying, it's the providers, it's the hospitals, it's the drug makers. This right here is an example of that. Now they say that they will start in 26 with 10 drugs, and then the next year they bring more and more and more. So it's going to be a phase-in approach. They say a lot of money can be saved if the drug manufacturers don't get in the way and interfere. So what the drug manufacturers are doing as we speak, and they're giving them 4 years to get ready for this, they are looking at ways to go around the provision.
Wow.
And one of the ways they may go around it is a thing called evergreening, where the manufacturers will take a particular drug and they'll make a little incremental change to it and then reintroduce it to the market
It's
as a new
drug.
drug. Okay, to
So it
keep
can
that
avoid. Yeah. So
yes,
they can avoid that.
so they can avoid negotiating. So now you say, well, why don't they just do something about it? Well, the people in Congress, a lot of them own stock in the drug manufacturing
Right.
companies.
Right. Because you would think they wouldn't have to wait to 2026 to implement something like this. It could be done tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
Well,
yeah.
that gives the people who are against it time to get their defenses up
Yeah.
and
To
make the
get a
changes that
workaround. Yeah.
you said something when you said Obamacare. I just realized how long it had been since I had heard that term,
Mm-hmm.
And how this was just this big focus. We're going to get rid of Obamacare. We're going to get rid of Obamacare. And Obamacare is probably here to stay,
Yeah.
and hopefully it's helping some people. Helping a lot
Well, it absolutely is helping some people. There are people that are getting access to health care that they didn't have. And there are parts of Obamacare that's really good. The part where a student or a kid can stay on their parents' health care to the age of 26. That's good. The fact that they would get rid of pre-existing conditions so that people that have a pre-existing condition can now get health care without it being priced so high that they can't afford it. Because what the insurance companies were doing, they were cherry picking. They would only insure you if you were healthy. It's just like getting a loan. If you can prove you don't need a loan, you can get a loan. But if you need a loan, you can't get one.
Right.
I always thought that was funny.
Yeah.
If you need it.
That's the way it is in society. It's all a game. You got to figure out what they're looking for and give them what they want, whether it's true or not, but they tell you to tell the truth. Just like on an insurance application, tell us what drugs are you taking, what ailments do you have? Well, if you tell them, then you're disqualified.
Right. You're denied.
So
speaking of telling the truth, what about this guy in Congress that's just lied all up and down the street and on the back street crossover, and they're still finding lies he told?
This man is unreal.
And he's elected to Congress.
Right.
The thing about it is, I'm going to say it, Donald Trump set the standard for lying with politicians. Okay? That's it, point blank. And you all know I'm not a Trump fan. And I am a Republican, but you don't have to be a Trump lover to be a Republican. Okay? I was a part of the party when Trump didn't exist.
I was about to say Republicans were here before Trump.
Absolutely. But he set the gold standard for telling lies. And they let him get away with it. So everybody think, well, hell, I can do it too.
Okay, yeah.
So this guy lies his way into Congress.
I mean, about everything, though. That's you find some people that may tell a little lie here or there, but this man lies about basically everything.
Well,
the thing about it, though, that I find disgusting is the fact that you have Republican leaders in Congress that are signing him to committees.
Yeah.
and
backing
seating
him.
him.
You're right.
That's
They,
the issue right there.
that's the main issue. They
So,
care more about their politics than they do about this country.
you know why? Because he's going to vote the way they want him to vote because he
Mhm.
wants to
Right.
stay there.
Mhm.
Right.
That's why they wanted
Exactly.
Herschel.
Exactly.
That's right. Herschel has
Someone they can
disappeared.
control.
Yeah.
Well, I just think the guy ought to be. What do you do in Congress? What do you do? Excommunicate him or whatever? I mean, how do you get him out? I don't know. Well,
Well,
He
however
should
you get him
resign.
out.
They should force him to resign.
yeah. Well, you have to strip away his power. The problem is that he was elected by the people in his district. So
And what are the people? And I haven't heard anything. What do the people in this district say?
they feel like they've been hoodwinked. They're
Yeah.
angry about it.
Right.
Okay.
So what they would have to do is probably try and organize a recall and get a special election to get him out. Congress can't really remove him because he was elected by that district of which he would
So it's
represent.
it's up to
Right.
him to resign
And
now.
it's up to him to resign, or those people, they have to try to see if they can pull together enough signatures or something like that where they can try and do a recall vote or something, or they just have to wait for the next 2 years up and then vote him out. Because when you get elected to Congress, you run every 2 years.
Well, that is a good thing that
Right.
you run every 2 years. So it's the world we're in. It's the world we're
Yes, it
in.
is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. It's a good discussion. So let's move on. Let's go to Sean. Sean's got a minute for us. Sean, are you there?
Good morning. My name is Shantia Jones, and this is Got a Minute. Tomorrow is February 1st. Stores are decorated with themes to honor Black History Month. Shirts, cards, notebooks, tumblers, you name it, they got it, and I love to see it. Now, Black History Month was created to focus on the contributions of African Americans in the United States. It honors all Black people from all periods of US history, from the enslaved people first brought over from Africa in the early 17th century to African Americans living in the United States today. Among the notable figures often spotlighted during Black History Month is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who fought for equal rights for Blacks during the 1950s and 1960s. Thurgood Marshall, the first African American justice appointed to the United States Supreme Court in 1967. Mae Jemison, who became the first female African American astronaut to travel to space in 1992. And Barack Obama, who was elected the first ever African American president of the United States in 2008. So, before I go, I'd like to leave you all with this. History has shown us that courage can be contagious and hope can take on a life of its own. Michelle Obama, the first Black First Lady of the United States. Thank you all for joining in. My name is Shantia Jones, and this has Got a Minute.
Thank you, Sean. She mentioned Thurgood Marshall, and I got to visit with Thurgood Marshall in his chambers once. He told me this incredible joke that's not appropriate for a Tuesday morning show. But I'll tell you guys when we get off there. But we had a great visit.
Well,
And
good.
it's one of the things I'm proud of that I got a chance to meet and chat.
Definitely an honor. Yes.
Definitely, yes. So let's move on to the G list. Hollywood has the A list, and here on Tuesdays with Thom, we have a G list. And our G list guest today is Kelly Johnson. Kelly is the CEO of the United Way Emerald Coast. She's the first woman to serve in that position. She has served in the nonprofit sector for more than a dozen years. Kelly believes in making a difference in the lives of others. She holds a bachelor's degree from Michael's favorite school, the University of Central Florida, where his favorite coach is still coaching. So let's meet and greet with Kelly Jensen. Kelly, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, Michael loves Gus Malzahn. He just, oh my goodness. I've never seen a man love
I
a man
know
like he loves
he
Gus.
gets excited every time we mention his name. You know?
Oh my word. I haven't been watching at all this season, so I don't even know if things are going well for us or what's happening back
It doesn't
home.
matter, Kelly. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Love it.
Hey,
True fan.
hey Kelly, you know, when people bring up stuff like that, you know, there's a bit of untruth to it. Okay, that's all I'll say.
I
You know,
gotcha.
it's
Gotcha.
probably just the opposite of what they're saying.
Oh my goodness.
So Kelly, tell us about the United Way and your job. So tell me what the fun part of your job is.
Oh my goodness. Every day brings on new challenges, and a lot of those are really fun. I love my job. I love what I do. You know, I started with United Ways about 12 years ago when I had my first job out of college. I worked for a nonprofit in Orlando, and it was heavily funded by the United Way down there. So I got to see, you know, on that side, being kind of a recipient agency, the difference that United Ways were making in their communities. And there are United Ways all across the globe. Each one is
1,600 of them, I
yeah.
understand. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They're all their own independent nonprofits. So they each have their own local board of directors, and they might do things a little bit differently, you know, from one community to the next. So our little corner of the world is Okaloosa and Walton counties, which is in the Florida Panhandle, the Fort Walton Beach, Destin, Crestview areas. And we're just doing all we can to fight for the health, education, and financial stability of every person here in our community. And we do that in partnership with 49 other incredible nonprofits here in our footprint.
Okay, you know, when people think, you mentioned Fort Walton Beach and Destin, they generally don't think about the people who go to work in real jobs every day.
Right.
They think about the beach and
Right.
how much fun they're gonna have and so on and so forth. So
Absolutely. We see that. Yeah, we
Go
see it
ahead.
all the time. This is a beautiful area. There is a lot of wealth in, you know, many pockets here across our community. But, you know, you go 2 streets over, across a bridge, and you really see a lot of need. And so people here oftentimes are really surprised to hear that 40% of our community lives in poverty or just one paycheck away from it. So we do studies, you know, across the state of Florida, looking at each county and what does it take to not just survive, but really thrive in those regions. So there is data to back this up that 40% of this beautiful community is really struggling. And that's really why, you know, United Way and our partners are needed here in our area.
You mentioned that I think I've read where your goal or what you shoot for is to make you believe in making a difference in the lives of others. How does that feel?
Yeah, you know, I grew up, I have 4 siblings and grew up, you know, in a 2-parent household, and we were always taught to give back. You know, we volunteered together, you know, we did a lot of things. We were very invested in our community. So that was something that was really instilled in me and my siblings as well from a very young age. And I'm a middle child, so kind of that nurturer, that peacekeeper, you know, in many situations. And I think those things just really molded me and helped shape, you know, who I am today. That I've tried to have other jobs outside of, you know, the nonprofit sector, and it just never felt like that's where I really was called to be. So working for a nonprofit is absolutely, I think, the best use of my passions and my skills. And it just gives me meaning each and every day to be able to wake up. And there are some real issues that our communities and others are facing, but to be able to do something to make somebody's life better is certainly motivating and encouraging and keeps me going every day.
That's great. That's great. So let's go to Michael and Barbara and see who's got a question for you. Who's up? Barbara, you got a question?
Yes, I'll start. Kelly, you mentioned you partner with 49 other nonprofits. Now, and I'm sure you probably have a waiting list. I know the United Way here in this area has a long waiting list of organizations that want to partner with the United Way agency. How do you pick and choose? What are your criteria that you use in selecting those organizations that you partner with?
Yeah, what a great question. So we currently, and this will be changing, so if you have me back next year, I may have some updates for you. But
Okay.
currently right
We'll have
now,
that.
yeah, a little teaser, right?
Right.
Okay.
Currently, once a year, we open up a certification process where any local nonprofit organization can apply to be a partner with United Way. They have to submit some documentation, answer some questions. We do all we can to kind of pre-vet them, make sure that they are really following the best practices of the nonprofit sector, that they're compliant with all federal or state legal filings. They are financially stable. They're following good governance practices. And as long as, they meet that criteria, then they're eligible. They become a partner agency. And from there, every relationship is very different. So some of them receive grants or money that is made possible because people donate to United Way. Some of them have volunteers that we help recruit and place at the organizations. We host nonprofit trainings at least quarterly to try to help them increase their knowledge and their skills to be, more effective and efficient nonprofits. And we get them together. During COVID, we were speaking earlier when we were coming on, about how COVID really taught us to leverage technology in new ways. And we saw that here in our community. We were able to start some nonprofit roundtables, and those were done virtually during COVID. But it was so important during that time that all the leaders of these agencies were talking to each other, that we were streamlining services, that we were collaborating and communicating and helping one another out during such a challenging time. And we saw so many benefits from that those agency roundtables are something that we continue today in kind of a hybrid format. More people are willing to come back in person, which is great, but we still have that Zoom option because this is a big territory. So it just helps save transportation for some of them.
Great. That's great.
Michael?
Sure. Kelly, thanks for being with us this morning. I wanted to ask you a question. How do you guys focus on your donor, because you're a nonprofit and money just doesn't magically appear, and you have all these commercials. I actually don't see as many commercials as I used to see for United Way. You used to always see commercials for United Way. I don't see them very often. So tell us a little bit the business side of how you run your organization, how you fund your projects.
Yeah, that's so funny. I've heard people talk about, they see United Ways through the NFL or through these commercials, and those are really partnerships that are done by United Way worldwide, kind of our parent organization, or, in communities where there is an NFL team. We don't have an NFL team here, so I wish that we had one so that we could build one of those really cool relationships and get on the commercials and whatnot, but we're not doing that here in Okaloosa and Walton counties. So the way that we fund our operations as well as grants to those nonprofit partners is really through our community. We're very grassroots. A lot of people know us through workplace campaigns. That's kind of the traditional model for United Ways, where we might go into a workplace once a year, let employees know what we're up to. They can contribute through payroll deduction. And that's really been the bread and butter for a lot of United Ways for about 100 years or so. But we're certainly evolving and getting with the times. And, even if you work somewhere that doesn't have a campaign, or you're retired, or you just don't, work for other reasons, that support is really critical to our success. So of course, people can make contributions, just on their own outside of the campaign. Here locally, we've also really put an emphasis on diversifying our funding the last couple of years. So I started here 3 years ago, just right before COVID happened. So that was a really fun time to jump into a new community and a first time, president and CEO position. But we looked at our finances and, we were really heavily driven on those workplace campaigns. And we knew that in order to be sustainable, we really needed to look for some outside funding as well, or diversify our funding. So we've really been able to secure a number of grants from some from the federal government, some from, statewide foundations, some from our community as well, to help us diversify and really launch some new initiatives and programs that were needed here in our community. We're doing a lot right now in the food insecurity arena, partnering with both school districts one through a statewide grant, one through a federal grant to get more food, healthy food and snacks to the children who need it from our Title I schools where there's the highest concentration of poverty. That's one example and something that we were able to fund through grants that we received outside of this community.
That's great.
Very good. So you're the first female to hold this position. Has that made a big difference? Is that you where you came from? Is this a different? How does it feel? Let me put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's scary to be the first of anything, right? You're like, am I speaking now for all women? Like, I certainly hope not, because I'm unique.
Yeah,
Not everybody's like me. I didn't move from far. I actually previously worked at the neighboring United Way, leading their fundraising efforts. So I was very familiar with this Panhandle region. I just kind of got to move a couple counties over and really start all over again with a new organization and new area. But I think, I grew up in the time of like girl power and take your daughter to work days, and was taught from that young age that girls can be anything and you can do whatever you want, and smash those glass ceilings, the sky's the limit. My parents really poured that into me. So I never thought I'd be here. I never thought I'd be a president and CEO of a nonprofit organization, but this is just where I feel as though I've really been led and where I'm really called to serve. And so really proud to be the first female president and CEO. It was cool going through some of our historical records here. I was able to see that this United Way was started by a female more than 65 years ago. And so it's kind of full circle that it was a community volunteer who really saw the need for United Way here and made it happen. And you think of how times have changed in 65 years. All the paperwork just recognized her as Mrs. Robert McCreary. She didn't even have her own first name. And so like in just that short time, it's kind of amazing to be able to be here and to represent. I think I lead with maybe a little, I try to lead with empathy, which I think is a more feminine trait sometimes. So I think that I'm certainly different than the prior leaders, and I appreciate the foundation that they set. But I definitely feel that this was the right place, right time for me and for this organization as well.
So I think I mentioned my wife told me to tell you hello. So are you an ABWA as well? Is that
I
where
am
you guys know
not.
each other? Okay.
No, I'm not yet, always looking to to connect with some great people. So I might have to check them out, but Miss Joyce is phenomenal. I got to know her a little bit through Impact 100, which she was, she's just so involved with, and really appreciate the work that they're doing here in our community. It's funny you mentioned her, because just yesterday, actually, I was sitting with the president and vice president of Impact 100 about something else, some possible opportunities and ways we can support one another. And Joyce's name came up, and I had to laugh with them, like, do you know what I'm going to go do tomorrow? And so they sent their love to Miss Joyce as well.
Oh, great. Okay. Other questions?
Yeah. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I was going to say, tell me about Family Days in Walton County. And the first one was held in December of this past year, 22. Tell me what that's about, how that concept came around, and the impact of that.
Yes, that was so much fun. And that is a partnership that we have in place with the Walton County School District, as well as a couple other nonprofit partners in this statewide grant that we received through No Kid Hungry. And so the whole goal was to try to get nutritious food into rural areas here across the state of Florida. So we were one of four, I think, collaborations that were chosen to launch this initiative. And so the whole goal, again, just tried to reduce barriers that families may face, often, living in poverty or in rural areas. How can we get food, to meet that basic needs for the families? So there's a couple of pieces that we're doing. We have little free pantries that we have throughout our 2-county area. So we help restock those as kind of a very grassroots way people can support their neighbors or take what you need in order to meet your basic needs. We have some food pantries that we're supporting at the Title I schools in Walton County. And then we also launched our Family Day. And our first one was in December. So our goal is to host this Family Day right before the 3 big breaks, right before winter break, right before spring break, and right before summer break. And we wanted to bring together our nonprofits or other community resources so that families could learn what resources are out there that they may be able to access just to help them meet, their needs. Each vendor, so to speak, had, a game or an activity or giveaways. So families were able to come in and meet all of these different nonprofits and community partners and learn about services. And then the first 300 families also left with a bag with a week's worth of groceries to help bridge that gap while the children were going to be out of school for the following week because of winter break, because so many of these families really are dependent upon that free and reduced lunch program. And when school is out, that can be really scary for a household who's living in poverty or financially, constrained. They really might not have the resources. So we were able just to use this grant and use this funding and use some incredible partners that stepped up to be a part of it, just to make sure that we were doing what we could to help bridge that need there for our neighbors. So this is the first time we had no idea what kind of response really we were going to have. And the people started lining up about 30 minutes, 45 minutes early.
Oh.
And in a matter of 2 hours, we were able to serve more than 1,145 individuals. So it was a successful event, and we're looking forward to doing it again in March, mid-March, right before spring break, and trying to make the next one even bigger and better for the families who really need us.
That's great.
Good for you guys. That was
Yes.
corporation I was doing some work for, and they were going to give away some grants, $2,500. And so I had to go talk to this lady. And when I told her that they were eligible for the $2,500, because I'm a business guy and you deal with numbers and money, you would have thought I had told her she was getting $25 million. I mean, she was so excited. And I thought, wow, this feels good.
Yes.
It does.
We're doing some good for somebody.
Right.
It does. Yeah, a lot of people know United Ways as grantors, that we give grants to other nonprofits as well. And that is always, a good day and a bad day. We call those agencies to let them know if they were selected for funding. So we get to have a lot of really great conversations. And it's amazing how much a nonprofit can stretch a dollar, right? The impact that we're able to create is amazing. So, we try to tell people all the time, you don't have to wait until you're a millionaire, to support your nonprofits. Every single dollar makes a difference, in your local community. And I think that that's really powerful. I think our average gift here is, $130 a year. So 10 bucks a month, that's what kind of our average donor is giving us. And you're probably not going to notice it, but that recipient who then has it turned into a meal or a night of shelter or a mental health prescription, it's going to be a game changer for them.
But I think a lot of people have the impression, especially if they work for a company, a corporation, or whatever, that they have to donate large sums of money to the United Way. I'd never heard anybody say you donate $13 a month. So that's interesting information. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah. If you have the big gifts, we'll certainly put them to work too. But don't think that I'm declining those. But every little bit, makes a difference.
Yeah.
Every single little bit.
I retired from a company here in Birmingham who expected every employee. That was part of the employee contract that you were going to donate a portion of your salary to United Way. And I actually had a coworker that used to, I don't know if he was bragging or complaining, but get a United Way pin if we donated so much money every year as giving a percentage. He said that was the most expensive piece of jewelry he owned.
Yeah, we hear that sometimes.
Right, but you really do feel good because we got a chance to go out to visit some of the United Way agencies we supported, and just to see where that money was, how that money was being utilized. It made a big difference, and you don't feel bad about what you're giving or having to give at that point because the money is being utilized for the right things.
Right. Yeah,
Well,
we
Kelly,
try nowadays to make sure nobody feels pressure to give, but if we're doing our jobs correctly, then hopefully you feel inspired to want to
Absolutely.
give back. And volunteering is another valuable way that you can support nonprofits. Maybe a financial gift isn't, in the cards for you right now, but same way, 1 hour, one time, or magnify it, multiply it, and do an hour a week, and we can find a project for you.
Right.
Now, Kelly, I just want to commend you on your family day and that project. And while you were talking and speaking about the kids, there was a program here in Gwinnett County where at certain schools, kids, the parents are supposed to pay for their lunch and stuff. And there were some kids that were going to school where their parents weren't able to pay. And so they had this big deficit. And then they get to the lunchroom line and then told they can't have lunch.
Mm.
And for a lot of those kids, that was the only meal they were going to get was
Right.
by
Absolutely.
going to school. And so a lot of people stepped up. And I know one person, I want to say it was a teacher. This one teacher, she just went in and started paying for all the kids that didn't have lunch and stuff. And that brought attention to it. So I was happy to hear you say that you guys are working with them, because you never know about a kid's situation coming to school and going to public school, and their parents are not able to pay for their lunch. And so they're sitting there and don't have anything to eat.
Right, right.
So,
And that perfectly, ties together our three pillars. Not having food is a financial issue, right? That the family didn't have the money to provide lunch for them. It's a health issue, right? How can a child not have a meal for a day? And an educational issue. Now you're going to send them back to the classroom and their tummy's rumbling. And how are
Right.
they supposed to learn? So all of those things tie together. That's why those are our three pillars, and they're just so interconnected. And so if we can, in order for people to be stable, they really need to be stable in all three of those areas. So something like these food programs is really important. My mother was a teacher, so I have, a heart and a passion. I saw her dig deep, into her own pockets many times, to provide for the children who needed it. But that's where, our community can come together and support these children as well. They're so vulnerable. You think of them standing in the lunch line and not even understanding the concept of money and being told you can't have lunch today. That's not right. And we can do something about that, whether that's your child or your neighbor's child or somebody from, your church. It shouldn't be happening to anybody here in our community. And so we have the power to be able to do something about that when we come together.
Right.
yeah.
So I want to change the subject just for a minute before we go and ask you about true crime podcast.
Obsessed. I'm obsessed. Yes, I love them. I love them. I can't get enough. I wish that I had taken some more criminology classes in college. I definitely took a lot of psychology and sociology courses back in the day, but I'm just kind of fascinated by the psychology behind it. And I am definitely binging on, a couple different podcasts right now. And my boyfriend always gets scared when he gets in my car. He's like, what is she going to be listening to today? Does he need to worry about his life? I'm like, okay. That's always a scary moment offering to give somebody a ride. I'm like, which podcast is going to pop in and play? But a couple of my teammates here are obsessed with them as well. So we have some good chats and recommendations for each other.
So you're
different than my day-to-day work at United Way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very different, and helps me decompress my day.
I don't binge, but I watch Forensic Files, and I'm just amazed at how dumb criminals are. I mean, it's like you go buy $100,000 life insurance policy on Monday, and then you kill your husband on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
Right. Come on.
Crazy.
We were watching a show the other night, a new show, and somebody did something. And he went back to his car and used his phone. I'm like, you can't use your cell phone. That needs to be on airplane mode. Don't you know they're going to track you on GPS now? They can triangulate or insert, some criminology words here. Oh my goodness.
Well, thank you so much for being with us.
Yes,
We really
thank you.
appreciate it. It's been great. And as you make those changes in the next year, you're certainly welcome to come back
Awesome.
and make us aware of them. That'd be great.
Perfect.
So thank you very much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I must say that you have the right position because you're very passionate about what you do,
Yes.
and it comes
Yes.
across when you're talking to us and engaging. So
Yes.
I know you're doing a bang up job, and so
Yes.
congratulations.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Okay. Well, we're going to move forward. Thank you very, very much. So I want to go back to the police for a minute. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama in the 1960s when the healthy thing to do was to be very respectful of the police. I never had any run-ins with them. Mostly I ran from them in our neighborhood. But it was understood that there were certain lines that you didn't cross. When I lived in Los Angeles, the police had a reputation of being as bad as the criminals. And so you wanted to avoid them at all cost. It's only been in the last few years when we had a new police chief who came to our small community and preached community policing. He not only preached it, he lived it. He showed up at all the community events, regardless of who was having the event, whether it was a church or a social club, whether they were Latin or black or white or whatever, he would show up. And he would answer questions and have conversation. The policemen today in our little community wave at you when they pass by you in their car. They acknowledge you when they ride through the neighborhood. Can we do that in big cities? I don't know, but we have to try. And as Michael alluded to earlier, not defund the police, but reform that culture that makes it okay to kill somebody over a traffic stop. And that is how I see it. Well, actually, I have a couple more things. There's a movie that's out called Black Balsam, Balsam. It's about the wooded area up between in the northeast corner of Georgia and the southwest corner of North Carolina. And it's an interesting film. I'm in it. I play the sheriff in it, and the film is available everywhere January 31st, which is today. It should be on Prime, Apple, and etc. So if you get a chance, look for Black Balsam, Balsam. I'm Sheriff Benson. And also, I want to say happy birthday to my sister, Kim. Her birthday is today, January 31st. Happy birthday, Kim. And that is how I see it on this January 31st in the year 2023. That's our show for today. We want to thank the audience. We appreciate you very much. Thank the G-list guest, Kelly Jensen, and her enthusiasm. We love it. Thank our sponsor, Best Girl Inc. Thank Michael, Barbara, Emily, and Joyce. And that's it on January 31st in the new year. Remember, enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.